It's the Millennial minus the consultants plus another Millennial. Adam Kail joins me on the consultant and the Millennial because Haydn Shaw, the guy I normally do this with, when I said you should hire him, apparently too many people took my advice, and now he's got to be out for a week. So that happens sometimes. Adam Kail of Harrison Gray Search and of Brothers Leather. Actually, I think our most popular guest to date, so decided to just have you step into the co-host chair.
I actually have a lot of bots that I have just download the podcast to make it look like I'm and that's what I do.
You've invested in your own ego.
Most podcasts that I'm on, I'm the most popular. It's because I have all these bots that I've triggered.
We're going to be talking about actually, since we're both elder millennials, I'm going to quote Star Wars here, which was the first time I ever heard the phrase "delusions of grandeur."
Yeah,
I think that was in Star Wars, the second one, Empire Strikes Back or whatever. We're going to talk about not having delusions of grandeur and actually just growing at a sustainable, not insane pace. Because you might be one of those people that's going to go on and found Uber or Twitter or something and grow at an insane pace. But then again, if you were going to be that, I bet you would have already done it. So why don't we talk about growing at a regular pace that's going to sustain, whether you're in a corporation, family business, or nonprofit, that's like not going to kill everybody involved and make you run out of money. And that's going to be the topic here. Adam, if you could just give, I'm going to turn my volume up, so I'm going to go off screen here for just a second. But if you could just give the 30-second bio on how you got to where you're at, which is running two companies, go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, so 2013, I left a company I was working for and decided to start my own search firm. And I had come from a corporate background. I'd come from a background where I was leading an organization and a number of people, and was responsible for up to $40 million in revenue. And went into the executive search world, did really well, started my own firm, and then my ex-boss sued me because he said I was violating my non-compete. And during that time, we were spending a lot of money on legal fees, and so I had an moment, as I'll call it. And, as I'm looking at my checking account dwindling, the money we'd saved, and so I decided I was looking for a leather bag. I couldn't find one that I liked at a good price, and so I decided to just put $2,000 towards a new business just to try to generate some revenue in case he got my company shut down, in case we had all these legal fees. And then Brothers Leather took off, and Harrison Gray was growing as well. And then I spent the last 5 years trying not to drown, and I have without a life jacket, and it's worked. But we've got through it. So that's a short-winded answer of how I've got to running two companies.
And I would say both you and I are old souls, like kind of half World War II generation trapped in millennial bodies, as Haydn would say if he were here.
Yeah.
And that we're both more traditionalists when it comes to I grew up around farming and family business, and I think that's where it came from for me. But you and I both have a different kind of idea than a lot of the millennial, let's have a pool table and create an app and do all that stuff, right?
Yeah, totally. I think my biggest pet peeve right now is that people have forgotten that most great companies have taken a long time to build. And it's the reason that Bitcoin and crypto went nuts for a while, because everybody saw people getting loaded overnight. And so it became really popular. And I think the same thing happens with business. We have these influencers who make it sound really easy, on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. And they're doing a good job of growing their personal brand, but they make it sound like anybody and their mom can be an entrepreneur, anybody and their sister can make $1 million, can have the life they want to have. And while I believe that, it's not as easy as it sounds. And I think people get a false reality of what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur or successful business owner, and we forget about the pain and the agony that it takes to get here.
And I'm just going to expand this as well, because we're seeing that we've got kind of three kinds of listeners. So we've got people in the nonprofit space, people in the corporate space, and then people in the family business space, right? And I have worked in all three of those settings, and I've seen all three of those settings go very wrong as far as trying to grow too fast. and that actually being what kills them. I'm actually gonna I'll use an example. I don't know if I have the authority to use, but whatever. There was a company called VeggieTales. There was like Christian kids cartoons about vegetables in the 90s.
VeggieTales.
Yeah, and
Kids still watch that.
Your kids still do watch it. So what happened to that company is they went from wildly successful to thinking that they literally could not fail at anything, and they wound up hiring like 10 people a week every week because I knew somebody that worked there. And then when they had a movie that didn't go as well as they thought it was going to go, it bankrupted the whole company. And the same thing can be said to be, that's obviously a corporate example. Family businesses and nonprofits. I've seen nonprofits with ridiculous goals that spent way too much money that just burned through cash. That all of a sudden, it wasn't the fact that they were bad at something that killed them. It was the fact that they just ran out of money, and that's on the leadership and the management for thinking that they had these delusions of grandeur. Adam, I need 10 seconds. Okay, so you said that you've had an approach to go slow here, and you're running two companies. They're both working, and you're not adding 75 employees, a year or whatever. So as a manager, how have you looked at this day to day, right? Because if you're in management or leadership, and Haydn's talked about the difference of leadership is a to-do list you can't get done that week, right? But both of those two kinds of roles should be thinking about growth regularly. And if you're not growing, if you're not going somewhere, I mean, the recession cometh. I'm going to say it on about every third episode until you get good and scared. It's going to get a lot harder to make money, no matter what context you're in. Totally. So you need to be thinking about growing, because you need to be thinking about how you're going to survive the famine. But if you grow too fast, you're also not going to be here in 6 months, because there's only one thing that shuts down corporations, family business, and nonprofits, and that's running out of cash. I have seen one business fail because they were making money and the partners hated each other. I've seen that once. Every other time, it's running out of cash. You can grow your way out of cash real fast.
Totally.
So
that was a challenge with Brothers, honestly, for a long time. Is we operated on a back order for 8 months, meaning that we would take orders and then we would place our orders. We would make the bags is what we would do, because we didn't have the cash to have. And then we grew to a place where I knew that we were losing sales because we didn't have the inventory in stock real time. So we started making investments in our company to get the stock in, which we ended up selling more, but then we had less cash. We couldn't grow. It was really difficult. And then you have taxes, which is a whole nother conversation. But it's really, really hard to grow effectively and sustainably, especially in a product business. But the other problem is that you have people coming into the marketplace, millennials, who, for example, I'm interviewing people we're hiring now at Harrison Gray, and we're at 4 people right now. We're 5 years old. Some people could look at that and say, man, why are they only at 4 people at 5 years? And my answer is I want a lot of cash in the bank, because A, the recession cometh. B, I'm more concerned with what my bank account looks like than what an outward appearance of my company looks like. And C, I'm you're building a foundation. You want to hire the right people. I'm not interested in people that are going to be here for 2 years. I'm interested in people that I can keep here for 5 to 10. And so, I had interviewing a kid yesterday, and he asked me this question. He's like, well, why, your company is 5 years old, but it looks like it's just a couple years old based on a staffing perspective. He's like, so, what do you say to that? And I said, the answer I just gave you. We're growing with the right people, and I want to have cash in my bank account. I could have 15 people in here, and I would be not sleeping at night because I don't know how I would make payroll. That could happen, and companies do that. But yeah, to your point, it's more important that you understand the internal health of your company rather than what it looks like on the outside. And people lose that really quickly. They lose that distinction.
Yeah. So how did you learn that? Did you see it go bad for somebody you worked for, or you've always just been more of a calculated type of leader, or what was going on there?
Well, I think with Brothers, it started growing. In its first full year, it did $500,000 in sales. Again, this is a company that I thought would do, if it did $15,000 the whole year, I would have been thrilled. I just didn't think anything would come from it. And so when we did that number of sales, and we were, we had 3 or 4 people, I was like, okay, and now I need to get a sales leader. I need to get more inventory shipping people. I need to get an executive assistant. And so I grew that company to 12 people. and I realized quickly that either I'm going to need an infusion of cash, or I hired too many people. And I wasn't hiring people from I was hiring the people because I really thought that the operation needed it. But what I missed was that I couldn't do both well. I was still running Harrison Gray, and I didn't have the time to invest on the brothers side. So what that taught me though was that with Harrison Gray, this is the company that I'm going to be running for the next 40 years. I really need to make sure that I do it smart, and that I hire the right people, and that I grow at the right pace, because it's my time. I'm training people. I'm the trainer. I'm the HR person. And I'm running my own book of business. So, I've got to be really selective with how I spend my time, and I'm not interested in throwing money away.
And that self-awareness thing is one of the hardest parts of business, I think. I was with a company at one point that the corporate structure, the VPs, and maybe a couple other key leaders, and the CEO, who didn't last too long after I got there, went away, and they came back with like their plan or whatever. It had like 57 goals for the year, and like 34 of them were priority A, like had to get done. And what happened is that they hired all these new people to do new initiatives, thinking they could grow the business really fast. And basically none of the new things worked, like none of them. And I think that's fairly, like, people, on the corporate side of things, or on the family business side of things in particular, I think that's a fairly typical case where, it's like, well, we succeeded at one thing, therefore we just can't lose. Maybe the most glaring example of that was Starbucks went through this phase where they thought they could run a record label, which is one of the hardest things to make money at, and they started building Starbucks across the street from each other, so you didn't have to turn left into a Starbucks, you could always turn right, and they ran out of money pretty quick, and adjusted course, and obviously they're doing fine now. But that temptation, I feel like, is one of those just continual temptations of leadership in particular. Of maybe I can push this further, especially if you're not really in tune with your managers and how your people are doing.
Exactly, and I think too that plays into this. And I fell into that trap with after I started Brothers and Harris Gray. In the first year, it was reasonably easy. Brothers was making money. We didn't have tons of expenses because we were small. We didn't have a retail store. We didn't have 12 people working for us. Harrison Gray was making money. So I did really well my first year, and I thought this is going to be great. What else can I do? I started to think about digital marketing consultancy. I owned a logo and a website called Batteries, which was this idea where EAZ, and it basically would ship. You'd get batteries on the regular, but you could also send them when they were dead. Send them back, because I found a way to recycle them in an effective way, because no one knows what to do with batteries when you're done with them. Like, you feel bad throwing them away, but you don't know what else to do with them. You can't recycle them in the recycling. And so I spent like $5,000 building this brand out that I never did anything with it, because everything got too hard. I had a legit logo guy who does stuff for Patagonia make this awesome logo, and it's sick. I still have it, but I never did anything with it because I fell in this trap of oh, this is easy. I can start 8 companies, no problem. I'll do that by the time I'm 40. And then I realized that one good grows slow, and what I was doing wasn't that good, and it was just a good first year, but I had a long way to go. And then you get sucked into this idea of multiple revenue streams, when I think people forget you need to have a really good revenue river first, and then you can maybe look at streams to come out of that river, or to add to that river. But people have little tiny revenue streams, and they're like, I need a million little revenue streams. And I'm like, no, have one great revenue river, and then when you're in that river and it's good and your life is stable and you've got time, then look for your streams. But I think people our age, man, are mid 30s and younger, get lost, and they just start focusing on how many companies can I run, how many companies can I be part of. I need to consult with 10, 15 companies. Newsflash, you can't consult unless you've done something. And
yeah.
There's so many consultants that haven't done anything, and they're trying to be consultants. And I'm like, what are you doing? You have no history. You have no track record. You can't just tell people you can help them and take $3,000 a month and call it good. It doesn't work.
I'm actually one of those weird people that's entertained by responding to those cold calls on LinkedIn, particularly when they're just utterly absurd of like, hey, I could do this for you, and it's $25,000 for the strategy. I like talking to those people and trying to see them squirm and like explain why they're worth it, because I think it's funny. And we're dancing on a line here because obviously, if you're not doing new things in some ways, what's the point of being in any kind of business or in the nonprofit space? And if you do nothing, you're also going to get smashed and rolled over. And I think a perfect example is going too far the other way. Was something that I may have used on this podcast before, but Blockbuster had a kind of infamous memo that leaked after they shut down that was like a year before they went out of business, and it was why Netflix isn't a threat. And number one was people like running into their neighbors at the store. Number two was they like flipping over the DVD case and reading the back. And number three is they like picking up snacks. I like more than all those things, pushing a button and it's there. And so, Blockbuster had plenty of time to, they started to get into the kiosk model like Redbox did. Too late. They could have gotten in the streaming thing. They were flush with cash, but they just sat there like idiots and it's sort of like, to do a somewhat internationally charged example. It's sort of like England and France in World War II. They saw this threat for almost a decade, and then they got invaded. England not physically invaded. So you can go the other way too, and it's not like you or I have the answer of like how much risk or how much new stuff is acceptable, but you've got to be, I think, aware of dual threats.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think you're also tapping into something where, like, same thing with Toys R Us, right? They knew the Amazon threat a long time ago, but they just figured, well, we're Toys R Us, we've been around, we'll be fine. And the answer is, in business and in life, you may not be fine. It may not work out for you unless you adjust, and unless you think, like, for example, in recruiting, a huge risk to us right now is AI.
Okay.
Right? Like, there's these products that big companies are buying that literally they're expensive, but they're like a company that might need a recruiter now, in 3 years might not need a recruiter because they can go into the system, upload the job description, give the system 8 companies they want to look for people from, give the system I want 10 years experience, I want this and that, and then in 24 hours, or probably faster in 3 years, but it'll bring you a list of people with their contact info, their phone numbers, their email addresses that fit your job perfectly. And then all you have to do, and a lot of them have CRMs built in, so you click reach out, and then it starts a email drip campaign to these people. Literally in 10 seconds, a job that takes a recruiter, 3 months, 3 weeks to find those 10 people based on going through the process. This system can do it for you. And so the question is, and I know a lot of recruiters that are like, what do we do about this? And I'm getting into AI because I want to be able to find those people and have the solutions so they don't have to implement this system, and they might do it anyway. But it's a huge risk to our industry, and I'm not naive enough to think that I can do better than a robot can, because I probably can't. I can build relationships better than a robot can, but the robot can find people faster than I can. So our company is setting up with AI because we want to get ahead of it, and we want to be on the cutting edge of it. And so when our clients say, oh, we use this system, I can say, yeah, I use it too, and here are the pitfalls. Here's what you're missing. So that's just one example, playing into your point, of something that will extinct a lot of recruiting firms in the next 5 years, unless you're unless you're staying up with it.
It's gonna knock a lot of things out, actually. Mm-hmm. And this is, we're kind of pivoting from the original conversation about risk and when to do when to usually do things, when to not. But talking about those things that could knock out your industry. One thing I think is so fascinating about retail is that retail has had tons and tons of chances. Like, you and I, to use the term elder millennials again, we were probably Amazon junkies in college, right? Like, if you were going to buy something, not that you had
to get my books.
Yeah, half.com. And it's not like Amazon was this unknown company in 2005, 2007, right? And yet retail pretty much has acted the same way since Amazon really started to get to be dominant. I'm not talking about them just like kind of knocking off some Barnes and Noble business. I'm talking about when they got into everything. And I don't have the answer. You're in retail. I'm not. I don't have the exact answer on how retail can outdo it, other than doing a lot better customer service, having a lot better relationship, and having better return policies and more flexibility and more solutions, right? But they're still not doing it. what is it? Something like half of retail is supposed to die, right?
Totally.
So I mean, you're in a retail-ish space. How are you handling that? Like,
Yeah. So what we do is, one, I sell to a company that sells on Amazon for me.
okay,
Because one, it's so hard to manage all that, and it's just Amazon's platform is not user friendly. The seller platform is really difficult to understand, in my opinion. So I sell to a company my products at wholesale, and then they can sell on whatever price they want them for. But at least I'm on Amazon, because some people just trust Amazon. I mean, I trust Amazon more than I trust a website. Like, I know I bought my daughter a sweatshirt. She doesn't like it. I'm going to return it today. I'll get free shipping returns. I'll get my money the second that it's scanned. I get refunded. Like, it's an insane process. And so we sell on Amazon to kind of mitigate that. But I think the brands that are going to make it are the brands that connect with their buyers, right? Like brands that are on Amazon now that sell in like big stores, they're going to be fine. They're still making their money. Like we get all of our toilet paper and paper towel from Amazon. Like, we have those recurring shipments. Those brands are fine. But like, if you have a product and you're in a space that's you could be threatened by Amazon, the only way you're going to make it, in my opinion, is if you connect with your buyer, and you know who your buyer is, and you're really focused on that. And like you said, the customer service has to be outstanding. The response time has to be outstanding. If they're not happy, you have to make it right, because they're going to give you 1 star on Facebook. And I mean, look at Brothers Leather's Facebook reviews. We have like 67 5 stars and 1 star, and that person was I'm not gonna say that person was very difficult to work with. We even made it right for her, and she still gave us 1 star. I don't know what to do with her.
okay.
But you know what I mean? Like, and that's just a testament to having a good brand. Like, you're gonna be okay if your customers love you.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. And retail lost that for so long because it didn't matter. They just dominated.
Yeah. I think that there's actually not a better example right now than T-Mobile, even though I think that I don't believe their CEO. Like, now it's like this thing where you have to be like a quirky personality to be a CEO and like be weird. And I think he was just like a normal dude until he like decided to take on this persona. So that bothers me. However, I will say that, we were on Verizon, wound up switching to T-Mobile when I went out on my own because it was cheaper and, saved $30-40 a month. Right. And the fact that
Like it?
I love it. My sister and brother-in-law share the plan with us, so they pay us cash and I just, pay the bill or whatever. We have free Netflix, which Amanda and I, my sister and brother-in-law, and my mom all use. And I got free MLB TV this year, which is like a couple $100. So those were completely unannounced. They just dropped them in. And I think that is a pretty good microcosm, and you can apply something like that in different ways, but that you've got to do something that, like, the bots or the Amazons or whatever, like, you got to be thinking about, well, I guess this goes back to growth. You got to be thinking about over delivering on your current customers before you think about crazy growth.
So let me piggyback on that with a story. I have DirecTV, and I've had DirecTV for 6 years, right? Because one, I hate Comcast, and I'll never give them $1 if I don't have to.
By the way, lower customer service rating than the IRS, Comcast.
Yeah,
people would rather get audited than deal with their internet company.
People would rather pay money to a government where you get nothing in return other than a safe-ish place to live. So DirecTV, my bill like 2 years ago was like $250, something like that. Hulu, YouTube TV start coming out, so I switched to Hulu last year. I called DirecTV and said I'm out. My Hulu bill was like $55 at the end of the day, with everything, with like multiple streaming and whatever. Like, I got a few add-ons, $55 for everything. I called DirecTV. I'm like, I'm out. They're like, can you please stay? I was like, no. So I canceled it. They called me a couple days later, and they're like, okay, what if we offered you this? $60 a month for DirecTV, free Sunday ticket, which I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan, so I can't watch them here really that often in Michigan. And we'll give you a $200 Visa cash gift card. I was like, okay, done. You had me at NFL Sunday Ticket. So they changed my bill from like $250 down to $60 and all that stuff. This year, same thing. I switched to Hulu because I'm like, all right, it's still cheaper than DirecTV. Plus, like, with satellite and West Michigan weather, it's just kind of crazy sometimes. So I switch. Same thing. Cancel. I'm like, no, guys, you guys did great for me last year, but this year I'm totally done. They call me and they said, okay, here's what we want to do this year. We'll give you it for $30 a month, free Sunday ticket, free Red Zone, free HBO. And I'm like, plus the Sunday ticket's like $600. I've paid for Sunday ticket before. I've paid for the package. This seems like a $600 thing with Red Zone. But that's a great example of, and they have that YouTube, they have that DirecTV Now thing, whatever. Like that doesn't, my friends have used, doesn't work that well. But that's a great example of a client, of someone saying, Adam's been with us for 6 years. He's paid his bill every month. We have a risk to lose him, probably forever, because you have to get that satellite dish installed. Like, it has to be installed, and they have to run the wire underneath here. You know, they have to set it all up. We're going to lose this guy forever. Let's just make it worth it, because what is it to us? We already have everything. We already have the money into it. And a lot of brands don't do that. They're like, okay, see ya. You'll be back. No, we won't.
Yeah. So, you know, if we're kind of combining all this, and by the way, I do something kind of similar that's really basic, really simple, because I live in Wisconsin at the moment. Probably not going to be that way forever, but, you know, we have two things that people in Illinois really like, which is where actually all of my customers are at the moment. I got a couple in Indiana, but we have Spotted Cow beer, which can't be sold outside the state. And then we have like cheese, and we have these baked goods called Kringles, which are like a Danish thing, right? So I just will randomly, even if I don't have a meeting with somebody, I'll just drop off beer. Just be like, hey, here you go. It's your month to be appreciated. Yeah. Beer, cheese, and a Danish. And, you know, I mean, sometimes I drop $75 on something like that, but people really appreciate it. They're, you know, and I just walk in, leave it, don't take up any of their time for an unscheduled meeting, and walk out.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about like how much, you know, effort and time you're going to put into growth, it seems like the first conversation is, how can I do more for the people who already are spending money with me every single month?
Exactly. And I think like for Harrison Gray, it's easy because we have like 30 to 40 clients that pay us every year. And so like at the end of the year, we do a nice gift for everybody, which shockingly a lot of firms don't do. But two, I think it's, you know, if a client for some reason has a bad experience, it's what happened, why did it happen, what can I do to make it right? Those are the three questions you have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
The what, the why, and the what happened, why did it happen, and what do I need to do? I mean, and so many businesses don't do that. They just don't do it. And the other thing too is if what you're doing, Seth, is by dropping that beer off, you're being proactive, because if something ever does happen, they're so much more inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt because of how you've treated them. You're not just trying to be great when things go bad. You're trying to be great all the time.
Yeah. Let's close out on this, because I know that you've been a pretty active supporter of nonprofits. We haven't hit on the nonprofit space so much here, and I'm curious as to your experience as a donor, as a supporter. When we talk about this stuff of like doing more to keep your current customer, as somebody who, you know, is a supporter of nonprofits, like what would that look like for you?
Like, what could a nonprofit do for me?
Yeah. So what is the nonprofit version of T-Mobile giving me free, you know, Netflix and free MLB TV, of DirecTV giving you, you know, Red Zone and NFL Sunday Ticket, right?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. And here's why I say that, because when I donate to a nonprofit, I don't expect anything, because I'm not doing it to get something out of it other than, I guess, maybe some personal gratification, but also that I think I'm blessed with the money that I have, and I'm going to give a portion of it away every year. And so I guess, you know, not to punt on your question, but I don't, you know, I don't look for anything I don't view myself as a consumer or anybody that really needs anything from a nonprofit, because they're doing the work that I'm not willing to do, quite frankly. However, what I've really the causes that I support, I really appreciate transparency in how they spend their money. I appreciate updates, right? Quarterly or monthly updates on what we're doing, where we need help, where we need prayer, where we need whatever. And I appreciate, like, you know, if you have to call them to get something, an efficient, someone that's like, oh, I need this document, or oh, I need to know where to send my check or whatever. Just someone that's competent that can, you know, make the most use of your time, right? So I love the transparency. I love knowing what's going on. But I don't view it as something that I need, you know. If I don't donate again, it's probably not because you did something wrong, probably because I'm found another organization that I want to help.
I'm actually going to say that you didn't punt on that. I think you answered it. And that, what are the things that go above and beyond? It's knowing exactly what they're doing with the money. And helping you if you need something, like you need a tax form or something like that, or you have a question. So we actually did answer it. So just to put a bow on all this, once again, it really is about first taking care of what you got and being way over the top fantastic with the people you already have. And then you can, I would say that now is the time maybe even to be a little more conservative while the economy's good. And then, family business, nonprofit or corporation, then you're going to have plenty of time where everything in the world is pretty cheap coming up. And that's a better time to take risks because, if you have money, there's more opportunities in the future than when everything costs too much right now in the business space. Like everything, like employees are getting paid more than they have any business getting paid, and good for them, right? Any kind of materials, office space, everything's overpriced. So if you can just do kind of the old school Bible thing where you're stocking up wheat in a warehouse for 7 years for the 7 years of famine, you're going to win in the next chapter of the American economy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to be focused on what's going on the inside than how it looks on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, let's, I am just thinking about too, specifically in corporations and family business, how I've seen people make bad decisions because they want to look cool.
Yeah.
Especially when they're doing the business version of maxing out your credit card to eat out and buy expensive clothes. And there is an ego thing there. I mean, I've seen it with CEOs and industries and stuff too. Like they want to have they want their business to look like a certain thing.
Like, so when I walk in a company, if I have a client and I'm consulting or whatever I'm doing, and I see a bunch of, if it's a startup, a newer company, or like 5 years old, and I see, like I walked in this company the other day, they've got, their offices are like pristine. They've got this podcasting booth. They've got
which, by the way, I don't even have that, and I'm involved in like 75,000 downloads a month, and I don't have a booth.
Yeah, they've got a booth. They've got an amazing layout. They've got 5 or 6 people, and so we're talking. We're going through the numbers, and I'm looking at their numbers, and I'm like, what is going on? And it turns out they used all that on their line of credit, thinking that would really help attract talent and that would improve productivity. And this is just, and this goes into the people that I'm interviewing now. They look at my office. I have a very humble office space. We've got 3 offices in here. It's not that big, but my rent is $800 a month. Like that, because I would rather spend that than $2,000 a month on my office, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, but they asked me the question like, well, this doesn't look like you're healthy. Like that's not what they're saying, but that's what they're saying. And my answer is, I'm more healthier than I've ever been because this stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is finding the right people that are gonna work hard, and our people make a lot of money when they're operating at a high level, and that's what I care about. And I don't care, like I'll get there. I'll have a sweet office one day, but I'll own the building, and I will have cash, and I'll build the whole thing out with cash. That's what I'll do. It's just gonna take. That's the good, grow slow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your company's 5 years younger than mine. You've got sweeter digs than I have. You have more people than I have, but you have no money. You're gonna be out of business in 6 months with a ton of debt on your head.
Every time I've been with a company that went through layoffs, they did some sort of remodeling project the same year they did layoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a universal rule, but every time I've seen it, man, people bought an expensive whatever conference room or couch or whatever, and then there was one less person there.
Totally. It's just you're focusing on the wrong things, and I would rather work for a client that's got really average, humble office spaces with $2 million in the bank account. That's that's a healthy company, not someone that make it look like they have the money that they don't have.
Adam, Kail, Harrison Gray Search, and Brothers Leather, if you just want to kind of shout out what you do as we wrap this thing up, man.
Yeah, the old plug sesh. If you need help finding good people for your company, you can find us at harrisongraysearch.com. There's also a chat bot that looks like it's me, but I do respond really quickly when I see that thing hit up when you log on the website. And then if you're looking for a sweet leather bag or journal with your company's logo, that's becoming a big part of our business now is custom branding. So we can custom brand your logos on our products. That's brothersleathersupply.com. Check that out too.
This is at this point you probably know what Haydn and I do, but peopledrivenresults.com. digitalprofitfarm.com. You'll find us, whatever. Also, check out the Consultant and the Millennial Facebook group, and Haydn will return next week.